Dear ambassadors, Rico-san and the panelists, honored guests, friends and colleagues, welcome to the second Nordic Talks Japan. My name is Nikos Karvonen, I'm Community Director at Nordic Innovation House Tokyo, and I will just share a few housekeeping items with you today. Our event today is a hybrid event. We have guests here at the Metsä Pavilion at the Embassy of Finland in Japan, as well as members joining us online. Today's talks and program will be held in English. If you wish to follow the Japanese interpretation, please log in to our Zoom event, and from the toolbar you can pick interpretation and the language that you wish to follow. During our discussion, we have some time for questions and answers. If you're following us online, please feel free to use the Q&A button that you will find from the Zoom toolbar, or if you're with us at the venue, please simply raise your hand and we will bring the microphone for you. Today's program will last 90 minutes. We will start with opening remarks from the Ambassador of Finland to Japan. Then we will continue for 1 hour moderated discussion followed with a Q&A. And in the end, we will enjoy closing remarks from the Ambassador of Norway to Japan. We hope that you enjoy the program that we have prepared for you today. And without further ado, I would like to introduce to the stage for opening remarks, Ambassador Orpana.
Well, thank you, Niklas. A warm welcome to this Nordic Talk event, a second in the series of talks we have host together with the all Nordic embassies here in Japan. My name is Pekka Orpana, and I'm the Finnish ambassador in Japan. It gives me particular pleasure that we are tonight and come on air from this unique wooden building we call Metsä Pavilion here at the premises of the Finnish embassy in Tokyo. Tonight we will talk about circular economy and textile industry. Why, you might ask? Usually when we are talking about sustainability and sustainable development goals, we tend to think that it is about heavy industries such as energy production or construction. But actually, according to some estimates, the clothing industry is the second largest polluter in the world, second only to oil. When we think about the need to make certain industries more environmentally sustainable, many of us do not think in first instance of the clothes we are wearing. Perhaps we should, and this evening might help us to do so. Japan and Nordic countries are societies characterized by high level of consumption, and therefore we have a particular responsibility to address sustainability. As we have in Japan and in Nordic countries high capacity to innovate, we also have means to do that. Already Nordic countries are global forerunners in designing roadmaps to circular economy and consumption, circular consumption. We are particularly strong in circular solutions related, for instance, to sustainable food, forest-based loops, and highly effective return, reuse, and recycling. And recently, there has been formidable development also in sustainable textile materials and reuse of textiles in the fashion industry. Circular economy solutions are essential to safeguard our biodiversity and contribute to achieving the SDGs, in particularly Sustainable Development Goal 12 on responsible production and consumption. One of the keys to solve the problems we face with climate change and biodiversity loss is that we abandon our current take, make, waste mentality in our economy and in our consumption behavior. At tonight's Nordic Talk, we hope to discuss how the fashion industry is shaping a circular economy from within. The latest material innovations are equally vital theme for tonight's conversation. Nordic countries have been highly innovative in developing new sustainable materials like the wood-based textiles created by Finnish companies such as Spinnova. There is no doubt that great innovations taking place in these fields in the Nordics are driven by citizens and consumers' demand for greener solutions and transparent production methods. The fashion companies have to meet the environmentally conscious customers' requirements in order to survive in this fiercely competitive industry. Young designers and startups relying on research and latest innovations are leading the way in Nordics. Our message to you all is that we need a revolution, a sustainable one, in how we invent, make, use and dispose textile materials. I hope that the discussion tonight will give us all inspirations how to take part with concrete actions in that revolution. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have here a brilliant panel of leading experts in this field who this evening will share their thoughts they have in mind. From Norway, we have Mr. Gisle Mariani Mardal, Head of Development at Norwegian Fashion and Textile Agenda. From Finland, Ms. Pirjo Kääriäinen, Professor of Design-Driven Fibre Innovation at the Aalto University. And from Japan, Mr. Daijiro Mizuno, Professor of Kyoto Institute of Technology Design Lab. I will now hand over to our wonderful moderator, Ms. Rico Iriyama, a PR and sales consultant at CPR Tokyo, while she is eager to get on with the talk. Rico-san, dear panelist, the floor is yours. Thank you very much. Arigatou gozaimashita.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So hello everybody. Thank you for coming this event today. And my name is Rico Iriyama. I am working at the PR agency in Tokyo called CPR Tokyo as a fashion consultant and a PR agent. I actually lived in Norway 7 years back in 2011, around that time. So I know a little bit about Norwegian sort of standard of the sustainability and all those things. So I'm very happy to be here, and I would like to also introduce, I would like to ask the self-introduction for the panelists here today. So from the top on the screen, I would like to introduce Gisle Mariani Mardal from Head of Development, Norwegian Fashion and Textile Agenda.
Hi, Rico. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Yes. Hi, Rico, and hi, Tokyo, and thank you so much for having me in the panel. Yes, my name is Gisle Mariani Mardal, and I am Head of Development at the Norwegian Fashion and Textile Agenda. This is an industry cluster for fashion and textile industry in Norway, and it's a publicly supported initiative. Our mission is to promote and enable sustainable business development in our national sports, fashion, textile economy, and obviously circularity is a hot topic. Myself, I have a background in fashion design and innovation management, and I've been working with the development of the fashion industry in Norway since 2009. And as a point of departure, to illustrate my point of view for this conversation, I believe that the circular economy is much more than recycling. I don't believe that we can recycle our way out of a linear economy. For me and for the work that we do, the pressing issue is reducing the total volume in items produced. So reducing overproduction, overconsumption, and stimulate underutilization is what we need to tackle first. And obviously, from this point of view, we believe that there is a new need for a design brief for the future of sustainable fashion, which is integrated into business, education, and academia. Thank you.
Thank you, Gisle. And then I would like to also ask you to introduce yourself, Professor Design of Driven Fiber Innovation at the Aalto University, Professor Pirjo Kääriäinen.
Good morning from here, or good afternoon for you in Tokyo. My name is Pirjo Kääriäinen, like already mentioned, and my background is in textile design. So I used to work for Finnish Scandinavian textile industry for almost 20 years before my career here at Aalto University. And currently, I'm mainly working with different kinds of material innovations and trying to inspire our new young professionals, but also our researchers, to collaborate together to solve these big issues related to materials in general, and to invent new options. So that's my point, how I'm coming to this discussion.
Thank you very much, Pirjo. And lastly, I would like to ask you to introduce yourself, Mr. Daijiro, Professor Daijiro Mizuno, Professor of Kyoto Institute of Technology Design Lab. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for having me today. I'm Daijiro Mizuno. I'm working for a Kyoto Design Lab at the Kyoto Institute of Technology on one hand, and on the other hand, I'm working as a distinguished visiting professor at Keio University Graduate School of Media and Governance. I'm here because I've been involved in fashion design. I studied and practiced fashion design in London during my master and PhD years at the Royal College of Art. During that period of time, I studied and practiced inclusive design in relation to fashion design. Then I came back to Japan and started dealing with issues relating to personal fabrication or digital fabrication, setting up a fab lab in Osaka, and so on. And of course, in the context of sustainability, I was heavily involved in the context of optimal production and manufacturing techniques, procedures, possible design futures. From that, I began to work with a biomaterial from the late 2010s onwards. And together with that, social inclusion and new techniques based on digital fabrication and biomaterials, I'm still working and speculating the possible futures of fashion design, and that's where I am. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Daijiro Sensei. I had a little bit of difficulty hearing you. Was it okay? Everybody? Yeah. Was it okay?
Do you hear me well?
Yeah, I hear you well, but sometimes it's a little bit difficult, but maybe, yeah, that's good. So I would like to start throwing the stone for the starting. as I said, I work at the fashion PR, and I've been in the fashion industry for quite a long time, actually. And I love to wear the fashion clothes, but at the same time, I care about lots about the environment as well. Today, I am wearing the Norwegian brand, one of the Norwegian brand, which using the recycled silver material jewelry. I feel like, I am contributing the environment sustainable world, but on the other hand, I feel that is it enough? Just we are using recycled material items only to improve our world. And I would like to ask about that. Maybe start with the Gisle.
Well, I think when it comes to the issue, like I said in my introduction, we are producing too many clothes. And just to illustrate this, in last year, we produced 100 billion items of clothing for 8 billion people. And since 1975, the year I was born, the global production of textile fiber has tripled. And from 2000 to 2015, the production volume has doubled. So obviously we see that there is a huge amount of clothes that are being produced that are not being used. And only 1% has been collected are routed for textile to textile recycling. So there's a huge potential in changing the way we're doing things. So what I believe very strongly in is a system change. The problem or the challenges with this systematic change is that there's been invested a lot of money into future operations from the companies today. So that's a challenge, but then the upside is the fact that the system that we have today is not actually profitable. It's not profitable for the industry. Ellen MacArthur Foundation estimates that about $500 billion in revenue is lost every year due to lack of recycling capabilities, and that the consumer loses the total value of $460 billion due to underutilization. Because according to Ellen MacArthur studies, we actually only wear our clothing 4 times. So if we just extend the lifespan of our clothes by 9 months, we can have a 20 to 30 reduction in CO2 emissions and reduction. And also, we believe that the second-hand retail value will be bigger than fast fashion by 2030. So there are some really great solutions there. The technology is ready, but the system needs to change.
Thank you, Gisle. What do you say, Pirjo, about that? Recycles and materials?
Yes, building on these comments, it is true that we are now at the stage where we have, and the business industry has recognized the problems broadly, and also understands that there needs to be new even business models to tackle these things. And there we need a system change. We also need, from my point of view, I think that the technologies are not ready yet, unfortunately. So we have plenty of new brilliant innovations already. For example, to recycle textiles either chemically or mechanically, but many of them are not yet ready to be scaled up. And if we thinking of the huge amount of material that or the waste that is in the system, so it is a really a big challenge to upscale the technologies to enable the material recycling. and to estimate all the implications that it will have, not only in our own systems, but on this global textile value change that we currently have. So it is extremely complicated topic, and having my background on this material innovations and that field, what I really see that we need to speed up there, and we need to get in many different levels, all the players need to be somehow involved to get them really working. So that at the same time that we get the system change, we also have these technologies and systems available.
Yes, thank you very much, Pirjo. And Professor Daijiro Mizuno Sensei, you are also mentioning about the complicated, the new material innovation is very complicated. And could you explain a little bit about that?
Sure. Can you hear me well now? I by the way, seems to me that you are having trouble with my.
So, okay now.
All right. I think building on top of what Gisle has said, and of course Pirjo said, systematic change is systemic change. I think that's the difficult bit that I have to point out. In order to create a very radical or somewhat transitioning change towards the more sustainable future, we need to think about the holistic value chain, and that can include consumer behaviors. And that, I think, is very, very difficult thing to solve. Of course, starting with the B2B business, raw material production to the production of yarns and fibers, and into the fashion textiles and for the garments. Up to that point, I think the systematic change can be fairly well achieved in the near future. But when it comes to the consumer use and disposal, we are not still able to find the right solutions to radically change the consumer behaviors towards more sustainable future, including the collections of the used garments, how we can encourage people to bring back or reuse the garments, so that the garments' longevity, production, when after the production, after the use, still people find it useful instead of disposing. We are not seeing that yet. So, and of course, after the disposal, we need to think about the whole value chain again, starting from the garment collection and remaking the fibers out of the used materials, which are mixed up with the various materials, including the buttons and dips and linings and all sorts. So, of course, the Pirjo is the expert in this field of material fiber recycling, but still, there are so many things that fashion designers can do, but we aren't able to catch up with those issues in terms of design. Yeah, it's not just about technology. And then, of course, it goes back to the original raw material collection bit, if it's about circularity. But there, we are still finding it super difficult to meet the demand of the manufacturers, in that the materials recycled materials are not as high quality as the virgin materials. So it's not really easy. Therefore, it is systemic change as well as the systematic change.
Yeah.
This complexity is super difficult to solve right at the moment. I think we are beginning to see the rise of emerging technology, emerging activism, emerging design briefs from the bits of the circularity. But still, we are not able to see this overarching design principles or design strategies to achieve that end.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, we all pointed out that the strategy and all this circulation is very needed at the moment. And also, Mr. Daijiro, you're also mentioning about the learning system, the circularity education as well, that we need to have those education system beforehand, or like, what do you?
Oh, sure. When I studied fashion design in late 1990s and 2000s in London, fashion design at large was about, or has been, or will be to a certain extent, about glamour, new aesthetics, new lifestyles, new representation of ourselves, which have very little to do with environmental sustainability or some sort of altruistic consumptions for helping the planet. So starting from the fashion drawings or pattern makings or how to use sewing machines or overlockers, whatever, many bachelor students aspire or they are leaning towards that kind of design attitude, design for the glamour, design for the new aesthetics, not so much about the environmental sustainability, at least during my period of time I had in London. Now it's changing a bit, as far as I understand, but still there is a huge discrepancy or huge gap between what's really needed for fashion designers to learn and what they're actually learning, or the design for sustainability course and fashion design course. Of course, after the bachelor degree years, you can begin to study, or you can study, of course, choose to study the design for sustainability as a master degree or PhD degree. Or of course, during the bachelor degree years, you can pick a mix and do a bit of design for sustainability related projects. But that's not good enough. From the day one, I think we really need to encourage fashion design or textile design students to study and practice environmental sustainability oriented fashion design for the better future. But that hasn't been around, or that's not still around globally yet.
I am sure that Gisle Mardal, Mr. Gisle Mardal, had studied in London as well, but how is the back then, and how is the education now in Norway?
Well, I really agree with what's been said here already. I did my degree in fashion in London at St. Martin's, which was a very and still is a very esteemed art college, and fashion. I still believe in the educational system is more focused on a creative process and the need for self-expression. The designer is somebody who is the creative talent to bring new products into the market, because by the end of the day, fashion is a very old system. It's about a continuous renewal, and that's the biggest issue here. If it was just a technical problem, I think we would have solved it much easier. But fashion is also about self-awareness. It's about the tribe who you belong with. It's an identification in society. So I believe that the fashion design needs, or fashion design education needs to change at the core. We need to design for a new future. And the future is changing rapidly. And I think that's a very exciting design brief. We need to look into the whole aspect of ownership. We need to look into the aspects of recyclability, of multiple use, something that is designed for repairing, for example, and obviously the quality of the garments that we are producing needs to be much, much higher than it is today. And so if you look at maybe the biggest problem is that the mass volume, the fast fashion products, which are coming into our market at such a high speed that you don't actually get to wear it until you have to buy something new. So I think when we look at fashion education, it needs to take into account that there is a crossover discipline that needs to be integrated. Because if you look at design education in general, it's actually problem solving. It's not just a purely aesthetic practice. So by the end of the day, I believe that there is a huge need for the fashion education system to change to match the needs of the future.
Thank you very much. I agree with that. And also Professor Pirjo was mentioning about the waste and no waste. I mean, actually the fabric or material has to be used forever and ever.
Yes, in fact, but maybe before going to that, I would like just comment a little bit on this educational aspect, because I completely agree what my colleagues here said about the fashion and design education. But I want to highlight, coming myself from the interdisciplinary university where we have also these technological and business aspects. So I really want to highlight that the need of two things. First, we need to educate also the textile engineers, we need to educate chemists, we need to educate business people, we need to educate our digital AI experts to really understand, to really tackle these problems in many different levels. And because what I notice that it's not enough that if we only educate our designers who quite easily still get interested and inspired of these things, but we also need to educate all others. And then we come to the second point, which is the collaboration and skills for collaboration. And that is something when I want to go back to the fashion education that we really need there to highlight the teamwork and a designer being a part of a team and kind of maybe the driver there in the team to really push the sustainability and thinking and design for sustainability into the whole organization. So that's where I also say a very important role for fashion designers now and in the future. But also the basic education for all the others is desperately needed.
How is the sort of education curriculum in Finland?
Well, we have had, for example, we've been struggling with textile engineering education. So it was you know, the industry was more or less cut down in recent decades in Scandinavia. So and that meant that also, for example, textile engineering education was not seen so important. But currently we are setting it up again, and because it is a crucial part of the puzzle to collaborate with all other, with business and design. So and if I then go back to this your question,
yes.
Rico-san, related to this waste and how to change the mindset of seeing, for example, our material flows not as waste at any stage, but seeing them always as a material for something new in different ways, in different levels. And that definitely needs then this interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary understanding and teams to solve, for example, these material related issues. But I really like the way that we should somehow change our mindset completely, that even the word waste, maybe we should not talk about waste anymore. We should just talk about raw materials that can be used for other purposes. And like nature is doing that there is no waste. It's always a raw material for something.
Like compost.
Yes.
Yes. Yes, but also we also always need to develop the new materials in order to reduce the environmental issues and everything. That's what Mr. Daijiro said as well. You said it's important to improve, but you are saying that like new material is not as good as probably might have some issues. Or
Oh, you mean the recycled materials?
Yeah.
Oh, technologically, right at the moment, recycled materials like recycled polyester, for example, is not as high quality as virgin materials, i.e. newly made materials. Therefore, say if you are purchasing a garment made up from a recycled polyester fabric, often the actual composition of the recycled material is like 20%. 80% is the virgin material. Some companies are trying really hard to come up with 100% recycled material fabric. Of course, companies like H&M are really supporting those new venture companies who are dealing with this new recycled material innovation, whether it is polyester or cotton or whatever. But right at the moment, yes, that is the problem.
Yes.
But, going back to what Pirjo has said, I think I really have to agree with what she has just said, in that it's really about open innovation, in that it's not really only the task of a fashion designer or the textile designer to challenge this very difficult problems. So they need to work with, or we need to work with the textile engineers or material scientists or environmental scientists or whoever, or policymakers even, to collectively decide the preferable features. But as far as I remember, I've never studied about how to design collaboratively in fashion design schools. I think that's another issue. It's really about artistic education. At least the education I had in London was very about that. So we need to maybe identify and explore the new arenas for such discipline, where we can collaboratively design and figure out this large-scale problem. Therefore, the universities like Aalto University is the very important place to study, because it's offering you that precisely. Transdisciplinary design is really not easy to offer in the single university. So the Aalto University has gathered different universities to get together to study, together to offer such programs, and I think I'm very keen to know more about that.
Yes, thank you very much. And also Gisle was mentioning about all the systems and the regulations and all the responsibility, producer's responsibility. I would like to hear a little bit about the system, fashion industry, textile industry system and the regulations.
Well, I would also just very quickly like to comment on the educational part of it, because I think this is the sort of starting point for the whole discussion. It's kind of one change, because I think education today is not just about educating students, it's also about educating companies and the businesses, because there is a real dire need to upgrade the competence level in the businesses. And that's how we work as a national cluster for fashion and sportswear companies, is that we identify this pressing issue, and then we put together a curricula, and we work very closely with the higher education level for the bachelor and master's degree to actually then help upgrade the curricula in the educational system, and then have them put together courses specifically targeting the companies. And there are very obviously many fields, like Pirjo was saying, that we need to focus on, and not just the fashion aspect of it or the design aspect of it. But when we are looking at the design of it, it's the new ways of designing using new types of technology. So 3D design, digital 3D design is becoming a very, very important area where designers actually need to upgrade their skill sets, because if you can't work in that new medium within the next 5 years, you won't actually have a job. The second is the idea of circular design or design for circularity. So we are next year putting together 2 courses for companies to have their staff being educated in these 2 design directions. And that's a very, I think when it comes to the policy aspect of it, a very interesting part of the policy discussion, because education obviously is part of the national toolbox in how we are shifting. So academia plays a very, very important part in how we are shifting society. And so we are actually being supported quite well by our local and national government. So it's both the municipality of Oslo, but also Norway as a whole that support these type of issues. But where we see maybe the most challenging part of it, which is the more kind of industrial change, is when it actually comes to putting circularity into action. Like in Norway, for example, I'm not sure what it's like in Finland, but we don't actually have a national system for collecting and sorting clothing and textiles. So that's like a big bottleneck. And earlier this year, the Norwegian government, following the EU plan for circular economy, suggests that textiles is one of the 7 focus areas that we need to look at, because there are so much waste now coming from textiles, and also because textiles contain so much plastics that we really need to sort this out and quite quickly. But there is no plan and there is no money put behind it yet, so we don't actually know how to tackle this. So also, again, as a national cluster, this is something that we now try to have a dialogue with the government about how can we actually put this into place so that we can start solving the problems, because there's a lot of talk, but we believe there's less action.
What about in Finland?
Well, yes, Finnish government has decided to that starting 2023, there should be a running system for textile collections. So that is going to be obligatory for all players, for home waste and for industrial waste. But the systems are still emerging. So we have now, there is a new plant to collect and treat textiles through mechanical recycling, but it is only one kind of a pilot plant, and that means that we have now 1 year to really work hard to get the whole system established. And of course, in EU level, European Union level, the same legislation will it's 2025, so a little bit more time for that. But it's in these years we should be working very, very efficiently to set up now these systems, how to do what has been decided and promised. So plenty of hard work in front of us all.
Yes.
To implement, also in Finland.
Anything from Japan? We are very behind.
Behind Norway or Finland. No sort of domestic collective discussions are being held, yet all the actions are not precisely planned yet. So right at the moment, as a head of the committee for Ministry of Industry and Commerce, on the speculating the possible futures of fashion industry in Japan, I am raising this as a pressing issue, and I have to do that, and I'll make sure that everyone comes up with the new ideas for challenging industrial and domestic garment waste as materials for recycling. But on the job training as well as education for the youngsters, very becoming really difficult at the moment because of the multiplicity of the subject matter that they need to study, that they need to learn, whether it is about strategic design planning for achieving circularity, for both incremental and radical change, material science or biomaterial or biotechnology related science, designing with for avatars in using the mixed reality or cross reality or virtual reality, using marvelous designers or cross 3D typical tools. All those things are happening at one go, and some might want to do it all, some might want to focus on some bits of elements. But since we need to have a holistic understanding of this radical change, everyone needs to understand more or less what's happening right at the moment.
Yes.
Everything first, and then you need to be selective about what you want to study or learn further. So how much time do we need to understand this? It's another question. I mean, it's so time consuming that everyone needs,
Yes.
is becoming really tired a little bit about how much more we need to learn and practice. Of course, we can discuss, but we need to take actions now. But in order to take right actions, we need to learn a substantial amount. So that, I think, is the sort of difficult issue that we are facing at the moment.
Very difficult. How much time we need to prepare and when to start, what to start. I think it's very difficult and all related to each other, like not only the education, but in textile or this finance and culture, everything is related. I think it's like another 10 minutes. We can discuss about those regulations and what to start, where you want to start.
Maybe I comment one thing before we move forward. We've been discussing about materials and in textile and fashion industry, but there's another important aspect that is all the chemicals, for example, that are used by industry. And if we now think for dyeing and printing processes, which are still quite polluting in many places around the globe. And then for example, different kinds of finishings, functional finishings, waterproofness or fire retardancy. There are very heavy chemicals now used, and when we move to this recycling of materials, we also need to consider those ones and deal with those ones. And it is very important for material science currently to also tackle, to find alternative options for those processes, dyeing and finishing processes, and if possible to replace some of the materials which are used nowadays, or chemicals that are used nowadays, with something more less harmful chemicals or ingredients. So that is another big challenge in addition to materials itself.
Can I also, I'll just have a comment to that, because I think this is also to do with regulations and policy, what will actually be allowed and what won't, because once you start redesigning the system and understanding how it will work for the future and what materials must be made out of and the content of the chemicals and everything, that's how it will be solved. I think that the idea of a linear process has always been the problem, because you've never really had to deal with the waste of it. It's just been something that you try to sort of get rid of either by burning or it's become landfill. But now that it's so much of it, and there is also the scarcity of raw material, so we actually need the material, because I mean, even cotton is not going to be available much longer in the volumes that we're used to, because there's not enough water. I mean, there's not enough land, fertile land, who can actually produce cotton. So I mean, there's all of these issues too. So it's like the policy now is it's not that it's nice to have, it's a need to have, because so much is changing so quickly. And so policy coming out of the EU, which is very important for the whole of the European Union, is, and obviously for the rest of the world, because this is something that we are moving quite quickly with, is the extended producer responsibility, which means that a brand is then accountable for the product also after it's been sold. So you actually, as a designer or as a product development team, have to take into account the total life cycle of this product. So obviously that is also the chemical compositions and the material flow and everything. The second is also then very closely related to this, the Eco Design Directive, which we've been part of an input session where we've given our points of view into what we believe will be important. And some of the suggestions coming there is actually the percentage that each item of clothing needs to have a certain percentage of recycled material in the material mix. So that's two very, very important policy documents that are being developed at the moment. But for companies, there's also the policies surrounding the financial aspect of it, the investment aspect of it. And that's to do with the taxonomy, where we now see very strict reporting on your sustainability or your environmental footprint as a company, which means that you won't actually attract either a public or private investment unless you can document that your ways of running your business have or qualifies within these new demands. So there's like this whole new policy that's changing, and if you don't comply, you know, I believe within the next 10 years we're going to see radical change, because it's like both a push and pull effect in this, because the upside of it will be the companies that will be the winner in the market of the future, and the ones who are doing it the way that they're doing now will totally lose out.
Thank you. Now is anybody who wants to talk a little bit more about regulations, or like, you know, what you want to change kind of things?
Building on top of this certificate or the transparency related issues for the sustainable company running, business running, I think globally, HEET index or Blue Sign or Ecotex or global content standard recycled content standard, and all sorts are around, but there is no such a thing as internationally validated set of standards, set of certificates yet. There are many important ones, but we are not so sure which one is the best. So when it comes to, say, chemical material use during the production phase, we have a ZDHC certificate. Some have it, some companies have it, some don't. Some are practicing well ethically, some are not. But whether they should all have that certificate or not, I can't tell. So first and foremost, I think, is about understanding life cycle assessment and make sure that whatever the company is doing, they need to be transparent and they need to have the set of right scientific quantitative evidence to back up their business. So on one hand, I understand that the certificates are around and some are really influential, but on the other hand, what's needed right at the moment is more about the basics of the life cycle assessment. That's how I see it.
I could continue there that you really hit into one of the big problems we have is this huge confusion. Even the people who would like to purchase sustainable, consume more in a sustainable way, it is really difficult to find proper information. There are so many labels and so many certificates for different purposes. Many of them are excellent, but for a user, it's really difficult to understand what is what. And of course, the same goes also to small companies. Many of these certificates cost, and they don't have resources to be part of those. And recently there has been a lot of talk of the carbon footprint. So for example, the Finnish Textile and Fashion Association is now working around this carbon footprint, setting up a program so that companies can more easily count their carbon footprints. But then how should we understand carbon footprint compared to all other certificates and, for example, life cycle analysis? So we are living in the middle of confusion. So I think it's really important that we talk about these things, and this transparency that was mentioned here is one of the keys that we really companies really try to explain what they are doing and how.
Yes, we found another problem then. Thank you very much, all of you. And I would like to ask all of you one question, last question. So starting with Gisle, so from all this conversation today, what is your plan and action now?
We are in very good development when it comes to creating education, new education, both for companies and for students. So basically building new knowledge. I think the competence level needs to be raised. Then we work within the policies that are coming. So developing a national sorting plant is definitely one of our biggest priorities. And then we are looking at re-industrialization into companies having better control of their product development. So we have developed sort of maker space or a factory in Oslo where companies can work with new 3D tools, design tools, and also test out prototype development to secure quality in their production lines. So those three are very, very important priorities for us.
Very interesting. Thank you very much. The same question to Mr. Daijiro. What is your plan and action now after this conversation?
When it comes to educating, working on the design research at the university, I think what I'll have to do is to offer students, youngsters, alternative future visions, not the future visions we had in the 20th century or the early 21st century. We need to come up with different, more sustainable future visions for their own futures. Otherwise, the type of future we had before is no longer sustainable. Then that should not be encouraged. In order to achieve that, and I'm actually working on the mushrooms. We are growing mushrooms on the 3D printed fabric that we developed. We developed the computer algorithm and the PLA material to print the textile and to grow the mushroom mycelium on it, so that it's completely biodegradable. But right at the moment, those things are really speculative. It's not for the market yet, but we need to come up with different futures through that kind of hands-on practice-led research. I think those are the things that I need to really do for their futures, for the students' futures, and for my futures as well.
Thank you very much. Yes, and same question to Professor Pirjo.
Well, my being only a small kind of a puzzle of this big picture, so I also try to do my share by not only educating by not planning the education for our fashion and design students, but also trying really to enhance the collaboration between design and material sciences and engineering at our university to help all these great ideas, not only at our own university, but of course also with companies to help things, to push them forward, speed up, and of course the communication is a big thing. So I keep on talking of these topics for different kinds of audiences as often as I can.
Thank you very much. Yes, now we almost come to the end of the session, but is anybody who wants to say one last thing, or should I just move to the question and answers?
Of course you can.
Yes, so I would like to ask people to have any questions from both the audience here or the internet.
Thank you. Thank you all three panelists. It was very interesting talk. And I feel that I'm not actually personally in the fashion industry, but I'm always very interested in the newest technology that's happening. And I feel that we are at the point that it's been 5 years since the SDG started. And we need radical change, like Mizuno Sensei has said. But I feel that every year there's been a bigger gap between the fashion industry and us, the consumers. So I feel like we need more education in our non-fashion related communities. And I feel like if there's any kind of hints that you guys can give us, that maybe we can bridge the gap from our side to the fashion industry, like to have some kind of like interconnecting community that we can kind of challenge in a new kind of way. For example, just it's a collaboration project with schools and etc. So I feel like if there's anything that you can comment on that would be great. Thank you.
I can say that this.
Yes, Pirjo first. Could you answer first? And
so one thing is that many companies have nowadays, they have already hired, for example, sustainability experts, people who are inside the companies and who really are starting to take care of this and discuss these issues but how to reach, how to bridge the gap between, for example, schools and the companies. So this is a really good question, and I think we should educate the future generations through schools. Would be really an excellent place. I mean, even from the kindergarten, from a very early stage, to change the mindset. Big problem is that people don't know where materials come from and where they go. They don't think of it. They might think what they eat, but they are not thinking what they are wearing. And so the big question is how to raise that question and inspire kids to explore that. And that could be one for the future, but otherwise maybe there will be better ideas from other panelists.
Well, I think it's a very interesting point that you're making, Pirjo, because we run a yearly consumer research where we ask the representative of consumers a set of questions, and the consumer doesn't really care about sustainability when it comes to clothing. I mean, it's actually a big issue, and one of the things is they don't care, and the second one is that they find it very, very confusing. Also, to what Pirjo was saying, because there isn't like there aren't any particular ways to actually know whether something is better than something else. And I think if you want to be a conscious consumer when it comes to fashion, then you have to buy quality. You have to pay more, and you have to treasure the products that you buy, and you have to take care of them. That's the most sustainable thing you can do as a consumer.
If I take the more of the sort of practical take on this issue, I can name some of the important stakeholders, like gaming industry, whether it is the Unity or Unreal Engine. People are using the game development platforms for dematerializing fashion. NFT fashion is really a hot topic right at the moment, but digital fashion and virtual fashion is so much more than investment for NFT art and design. It's about dematerializing our unnecessary clothes. Together with the gaming industry, for example, is we can think about and we can come up with new business proposals for the unchanging fashion industry on one hand. On the other hand, we can work with multi-species anthropology guides. That's another take, but they are more willing to deal with issues relating to ELSI, E-L-S-I. Rather than just designing for human beings, they are more willing to engage with issues relating to other species sustainability. So through their eyes and through their ideas, we can come up with new and alternative visions for the sustainable futures with mushrooms or with biomass or with chemical materials or whatever. So there are interesting sort of topics around, and I think what's really important after all is that in order to change the center of the fashion industry from the periphery, after all, they need to come up, people need to come up with the new business models so that the core of the fashion industry can shift towards the periphery. Otherwise, if we are just discussing things, it's all right, but the conservative core of the fashion industry won't move. That's how I see the problem.
Maybe we should educate the educators.
It's a good
so that
point.
They can educate then the next generations.
Thank you very much, all of you. Is there any questions?
Thank you very much for all this wonderful discussion. My name is Yuki. I'm a freelance journalist and working for a Japanese sustainability business magazine, Altana. And so Professor you were mentioned that less talk is less action, and I completely agree with that, the idea. And my question is, what do you think the role of media? Because I think the journalist is basically tends to criticize more than encouraging to do something that depth in the new ideas, or this, especially like overall for the business, whoever does too. So I wanted to hear any of your opinions.
Yes, so starting from Gisle, if you have any answer.
Yeah, sure. I think it's a very good point. Media has a big responsibility when it comes to changing consumer behavior. Unfortunately, media today is very multifaceted, and a lot of young people might not follow established media like myself or like the older generations. So there's a lot of social influencers that might not always be or actually have the answer, because many of them are actually paid to encourage consumption through sponsorship. So it's hard, I think, for the media consumer to know which is true. I mean, and then to your point of media's critical look on what's going on, I think it's very important that the media is critical, because there's a lot of greenwashing. But I also think that it's very easy to be critical, and it's actually very hard. And this is coming from somebody who actually tries to make a difference, somebody who tries to take knowledge and put it into action. It's actually hard, really, really hard to change the established ways of doing things. It's really hard to shift mentality. And to what I was saying is that the consumer don't really care. It's because it's actually too much to take in. And people don't believe that they can actually make a difference. And it's true, obviously, an individual in itself won't make a difference, but as a part of a whole, it's what makes all the difference. So I think the media really needs to scrutinize. It's a critical part of change.
Any additional answers to it? Thank you very much. Any other questions?
Hi. Yes, this is a question from the online, from our online audience, from Nigel Asai. Thank you very much. The question is about textile caring, text care. In order to reduce waste of course, textile should be used for a long time, not just one time to wear. I think easy design and material for textile care for people in professional text care. For this purpose, working together with textile industry. Is there any ideas from this view? Thank you.
Yes, Pirjo, thank you.
Maybe I can start, but this is very interesting. You know, there are these rental systems running already for hotel textiles and workwear. So in most cases, there are that kind of examples which are doing kind of an established business with rental textile systems in general for different kinds of public premises. And I think, and workwear, I think that's a very good example of, in fact, how this overall use of materials and can be reduced. And now we are seeing at least here some examples of that rental idea coming also to to consumers, and that you can just, if you have a party, you can go and get the dress for that night, and then you can take it back and the company will take care of that. So definitely the different kinds of collaboration with this textile industry and is very, very important and valuable. Very good idea there.
Any additional answer to it?
Of course, there are, from design side, there are ways to encourage more design for longevity, design for durability. Of course, if you use the durable material for monomaterials, materials that are easy to care, designs that are made to be disassembled and reassembled easily, those design elements, design discipline or design principles can really help people to care things. But at the same time, those who will engage with caring the objects, products, need to know how to do it. And what's really interesting, I think, to know is how Patagonia is practicing that. The Patagonia, the US fashion company, is offering free means and techniques to repair things on the website called iFixit. And that website really introduces the concept of the right to repair. And I think it's really important that consumers know how to repair things, how to care things right, and do it in the right way. Whilst from the producer side, we need to think about how we can encourage people to do it right. From the consumer side, they need to have an access to the techniques and tools and how and know how doing it right.
Thank you very much. Maybe the last question.
Right. As a textile consumer and fashion industry customer, what can I do or what should I do? What is your one recommendation or call for action for me as an individual? I would love to hear each panelist's view on the things that the small person can do while we wait for the industrial and systemic change. Thank you.
Well, I think I already answered that question, I guess, but I would recommend that you buy something that you will cherish and wear, and you will pay for the true cost of it, because then you will treasure it more, something that you can use for a long time, and rather do that than to buy a lot of cheaper clothes that you will wear for less time and that you would throw away.
Thank you. Hello?
Okay, yeah, I was thinking of, it's really about love your garments type of thing, like Gisle was saying that and also maybe we can, as an individuals, learn a little bit from the past, because the previous generation they were forced. They were not, because I mean, they were, at least here, they were forced to be very effective on repairing and taking care of everything of the materials, and they knew how to do that. They had those skills. So there are, what is really nice to see here in Finland, that there are plenty of young people who are interested in really like repairing or making things by themselves, and thus building this kind of a connection, mental, emotional connection between these materials. And also young people who love to watch YouTube videos, how to sew your own blower, for example. And then the next question is, maybe we also should, next thing is that maybe we should start to think that does everything need to be so perfect? Could we accept that, okay, we can see here that it has been mended and it's still good, it's still valuable. So at least those things as an individual we can do.
Thank you. And lastly, Mr. Mizuno, Daijiro.
I think one thing that we can do immediately is to treat garments like organic vegetables when purchasing, at least. When you go to supermarket and try to buy the organically grown vegetables, then you check all sorts of things at the supermarket, where it's coming from, who made it, and how it tastes like, how much it is, whether you are hungry to have it, whether you want to have it because you're hungry or not, so on and so forth. So it's not really just about purchasing a mass-produced vegetable for the sake of making spaghetti or whatever. So I think it's really important to know the story behind the product and make the right choice of purchase at the point of purchasing. It's a really small thing, but it's really effective to understand the origins of where it's coming from, who made it, and whether you really want to have it or not. Those things are really small, but really essential. And it's so effective at least for the retailers.
Okay, thank you very much, all of three of you. We almost come to the end of the session now. It's been a very inspiring 80 minutes. And now I would like to pass this closing remarks to Norwegian Ambassador Nyhamar. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a difficult task, but a great pleasure to summarize this rich discussion on circular economy and the textile industry. My colleague, Ambassador Orpana, opened today's Nordic Talks asking why. Why discuss circular economy and the textile industry in terms of sustainable development goals? When we think about the sustainable development goals, climate change, many of us think about very different things, such as energy production or industry and transport. However, as even the term fast fashion should indicate to us, the scale and pace of textile consumption in our society represents a huge sustainability problem. The textile industry, too, needs a paradigm shift to ensure that they meet the SDGs. And I believe that we have heard today that the industry has indeed taken this challenge on in terms of the development and circularity of materials, in terms of changing the business models that drive fashion. The insights conveyed by our panel do indicate that the industry is starting to look for possible solutions to ensure responsible consumption and reduce the global impact of fashion in terms of materials, energy, and waste. So what many companies in the industry will be looking for is how they can best be involved in necessary change towards fulfilling the SDG number 12 on responsible consumption, while at the same time maintain a viable business. The calls for action we have heard today all address the need for a sustainability revolution, as Ambassador Orpana referred to in his opening remarks. But how can we break with the practices that reduce our possibility to achieve a sustainable future? To move in a better direction, unsustainable business practices must be abolished. And this is, of course, easier said than done. Systematic change requires systemic change through the whole value chain, according to Mr. Mardal. The question of materials comes up. The very dyeing and finishing of materials plays right into the possibilities of recycling. And as for design, circularity is the new design brief in all aspects of our business models, from the sketch pad to material sourcing to the very infrastructure that may support sustainable circular consumption. But herein is also the possibility, because design is all about problem solving. And we need, in addition to good designers, also a new normative framework to promote change and industrial solutions that facilitate a prohibition against throwing textiles in the trash and make it a truly circular textile industry. We need not only to recycle more, but also to throw away less, according to Mr. Mardal. Fashion education is in all aspects of the trade was also pointed out as a very important point, underlined among others by Professor Kääriäinen. Finally, discussing the textile industry is not only about one industry and one aspect of human activity. It speaks to the challenges and potential solutions for innovation, business models, norms, and behavior in general, thus taking this conversation way beyond today's topic and making it relevant for even the least fashion-conscious among us. There is indeed much to do, both for the industry and for our governments, as Professor Kääriäinen pointed out, but it's also up to us. It's in fact good news that we as consumers and bearers and buyers of clothes can also influence what is going on, influence the very business models of the future. Well, now it is my pleasure, on behalf of the Nordic embassies and the Nordic Innovation House, to thank the panel, Professor Kääriäinen, Professor Mizuno, and Mr. Mardal, for a very refreshing discussion, and our moderator, Ms. Iriyama, for insightful guidance and comments. And thank you also for good questions from the audience and online audience also. And a sincere thanks to all of you who have joined us here at the Metsä Pavilion and online. I hope that you have been inspired to act. The Nordic Talks of Tokyo series will now take a break until next year. But then we will continue. The next event in our series will be on e-government, followed by the fourth installment, which will highlight gender equality. And we will share invitations and information early next year. Finally, for those of you here at the Embassy of Finland, I hope that you will stay for a little while for an informal mingle and to enjoy a drink and a bite to eat prepared by our generous hosts. For participants online, I'm afraid I can only thank you once again and wish you a very good night or day, depending on where you're at. Thank you very much for your attention.